Here with your 50 forward story. We're leaving the Madison area and we're heading up to Green Bay. My favorite city in the whole world. So we're going up to see Mike Roemer. As an award-winning photojournalist with the Associated Press, Mike Roemer covers the Green Bay Packers. Whether it's a compelling game day image or a thought-provoking photo from his commercial photography business, there's always a story behind the shot. Our interview is at Mike's inviting Green Bay area home, not at Lambeau Field, where I've seen him many times, on a warm March day when he and his wife Judy were making their own maple syrup. Good to be in your home.
Actually, I didn't recognize you when you first pulled up because you didn't have the Packer owner's wedge on your head, but now I know who you are. Luckily, through Facebook, I knew what you looked like without the cheese on your head. But yeah, so I'm a photographer. I'm in my mid-50s, so I'm kind of, trying to not necessarily I don't like to think I'm making a transition into retirement yet. I hope that I will shoot pictures for a long time in the future, but as you age, there's little things that happen to your body. I don't kneel in the end zone as well as I used to. I now find myself standing up and moving around more, and I got to even think I'm going to have to get up at the end of the game, and I want to be able to actually move. So I should probably get up right now and make sure my knees still work. So let me show you some of the photos. I've got up about 5 of my Packer pictures and then just a variety of other stuff. So this shot here, you probably recognize that guy. Do you know who that is? It's that guy from Dancing from the Stars, right?
No, he's a Packer. That's a little thing.
But it's Donald Driver catching his last touchdown.
Did not know that.
And we didn't know that at the time. But I always cover the north end zone. So this is in the north end zone. And when I say I cover the north end zone, I shoot for the Associated Press, and I have for many years. And there's somebody else in the south end zone. So I'm in the north end zone. This is Donald Driver catching it. And immediately the player scores the touchdown, and you get prepared for, whatever type of celebration. And this year they didn't do as many Lambeau leaps. They're kind of getting out of that. But a couple of years ago, anytime somebody scored, they did a Lambeau leap. So
there wasn't that many reasons for Lambeau leaps this year either.
Well, I think players like Jordy Nelson and even Randall Cobb, I think they think of the potential of an injury.
Right. Yep.
So Donald Driver jumped up in the stands, and you're going towards the stands. You grab this camera, which is a camera with a 16-35 on it, and you've got it set up so that you're not looking through the camera. You're just lifting up, you're Hail Marying it, you hit the autofocus button, you got everything pretty much on auto, but you know kind of where to point it. So I'm going in there, and there's a guy, a friend of mine, he's a photographer at the Appleton paper, Dan Powers, and if Dan sees this, he'll probably get a chuckle out of it, but I kind of got bumped out of where I wanted to be because Dan was coming in too, so I got pushed over here to the side, which gave me a little bit different angle. It came in so I saw Donald Driver's face, and he stuck his tongue out and those big eyes, and just made that great connection with this person in front of him, who she later on reached out to me. Just all these great faces.
Right.
And it's just this great moment. And I remember I usually don't edit my own stuff, but the editor that we usually have, he was, I think, off shooting, covering baseball or editing baseball. So the World Series or whatever. So I was doing my own stuff that day, and I remember this coming up, and I really thought it was a great shot. And a couple days later, I realized that it really was a great shot because Sports Illustrated ran it as a 2-page spread, and it just popped up in all these various things. And this was in October, I believe, and by the end of the year, it was coming up on these lists, and the 50 best sports photos of the year, the top 100 best sports photos of the year. So I I better enter it in some of these competitions, and I'm not a big competition guy. But it won first place in sports feature in International Pictures of the Year, and that was the biggest award I ever won, and it was very emotional for me. I remember the night that I found out, we were actually, you could watch the judging online, and I saw the picture come up, and you can see this one's out, that one's in, and it made it through the first round, but we had to go to this party so I wasn't able to watch the competition. But at that party, I had brought my computer with and got permission from my wife to step away for a minute and and check, and I found out that I had won. And I mean, that was a major thing for me. And my dad was a photographer his entire career, and he actually covered the Packers for many years, and his famous shot is from the Ice Bowl. And, you know, I remember calling him and, you know, got very emotional telling him that I had won. And then, you know, later on found out then the domestic one that the National Press Photographers, their best of photography won out that won, and that ended up being the picture that they used for the cover of the awards book that year. And I really hoped it would do real well in the Pro Football Hall of Fame contest, and it did okay. It didn't win the big award, but I've won in that contest I think 3 times so far, so that's always kind of fun. But you know, it's not all about contests.
It isn't, a lot of people aren't driven by awards, and for sure you're not, but it's nice to be recognized. And it's sometimes when you're a little bit more surprised and you're just doing what you do, and then it hits you, and then to be able to share that with family, and then have your dad in the same field,
Right.
That would be so awesome.
Thank you. All right, let's look at another one. So this is an action shot, but it's not this great peak action moment, but it's such a storytelling moment. I mean, there you got, you know, Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball in a snowstorm. You can see the stands behind it, the snow falling, the linemen all in place. And I guess I don't even know who, you can see he's throwing to this player. And who is that even?
No, you're making me do this. I got to get my glasses on.
Is that James Jones maybe that he's throwing it to? Ty Montgomery's blocking for him, you know, all this other stuff going on. But
I think that's Richard Rodgers. It looks like 82 to me.
Okay.
Richard Rodgers, maybe?
Maybe it is. But, you know, it's just
Montgomery's right there, so.
Yeah. So it's just this nice moment, you know, and it puts things into context, you know. So I love just the storytelling.
It almost looks like a canvas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, like somebody painted that, so.
Yeah.
And then the angle of it, yeah.
Yep. So this is before the game. It's just this nice moment again,
Right.
and it's away from peak action, and it, you know, tells a little bit about these guys. You can, you know, from the look on Aaron's face, you know, you can tell, you know, he
Right.
likes doing this type of
Right.
stuff, and there's the personality in Randall Cobb, and
And Randall gets the photobomb, the photobomber.
right. So, like that. Now, this is always a ritual. Always towards the end of warm-ups, Aaron would always come over here, and I think when he first started doing it, it was with Driver, and then it was Jordy, and then it was Randall. And this last year, or the last couple of years, he really doesn't have anyone to do it with anymore. You know, I think he almost like, if I do it, that person leaves or gets injured or whatever. So this year it wasn't the same, but always, you know, I just love, this was a very shallow depth of field, which even maybe later on when we talk about photo tips, I'd like to shoot shallow depth of field just so it separates what you want from the background. So the balls are suspended, you know, you see that the muscle in Aaron's arm, that look on his face. It's just this nice moment. A couple years ago, it seemed like every game there was a bird or a squirrel or something down on the field. And this squirrel had been just running around the field the entire game.
I remember it.
And I'm just like waiting, you know, trying to get some decent type of shot. And again, I don't know who the players are, but that's 95.
Dayton, is it?
Dayton Jones. So Dayton Jones tries, you know, puts his helmet down, tries to get the squirrel in his helmet. And it's just this moment that the squirrel is just coming by the helmet, you know. And again, it's not that peak action. It's just something different from the game.
And I said that game, we didn't have much yardage, but that squirrel was the leading rusher that year, that game.
He did well. So let's move on to Mike's more than just a Packer photographer. This was just one morning, one of the young kids was out doing his chores, and you know, here he's trying to bottle feed these calves, and I just love the interaction. You know, the milk is dripping here, and you know, this other one's trying to lick him.
It's just cool, and that's a neat picture of it too, showing a young man learning a work ethic and having pets.
Right, and I'm always amazed at these kids in these dairy farms. You know, they are hard-working kids. So now this is at that same dairy farm, and this picture's a little graphic, but it is real life on a dairy farm.
Right.
And these farmers, this cow was having trouble giving birth, and they had to step in and help. And you know, some people may be grossed out or thinking they're being mean to that animal, but they saved a lot of issues for that cow and possible issues for that calf. So to me, this is just a nice landscape photo. I love the lines, love the hills, love the roll to it. Love the barn just peering over it. So
Right.
I'm not just a people photographer. I can shoot the occasional landscape shot. So
Cool.
all right, so we looked at some of the sport stuff, Packer stuff, and showed you some of the ag stuff, but I also do a lot of industrial, and I like to do more industrial also. Again, more real people, real situations. So I have an industrial client, a food manufacturer, and they sent me to Leon, Mexico a couple years ago to shoot at one of their plants. And it's probably the first time they had a photographer in that plant, and these workers had seen me around the plant all morning long, and now I'm in the lunchroom, and these guys were trying to catch my attention, and had my cameras with me, and they're kind of hamming it up, and I'm like, come together a little bit more, and they did, and I wouldn't necessarily catch this moment, I think, at a plant in the U.S., but these guys, just so happy that I was there and that I was documenting, their lives, and just the smiles and looks on their faces, and just that camaraderie, I just love that moment.
Here again, these people are really happy to interact with you. And I go to Mexico almost every year, and a lot of them where I walk around, when they say hi to you, they always put their hand over their heart, and there you can tell by that photo you're capturing, they're really glad you're there, and they're having fun with one another.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool.
So this photo, it's of a volunteer firefighter in New Holstein, and Judy, my wife, one of her cousins said, "Hey, my husband and his 2 boys are volunteer firefighters. Could you take a picture of them together?" Because they were all on volunteers in this fire department, and the one was moving, so he's going to be there. I'm like, I would love to, but if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. Can we get a cool truck? Can we do it at night? Can I be in total creative control of this? So whatever you need, we'll get the fire truck. We'll do that. Get the guys in their coats, and I just love that serious look on his face. And I've got my couple assistants with me, and we've got smoke machines, and we're putting that smoke out there and pumping light in a couple different directions, and it's just a cool shot.
I thought it was a real photo, and it grabbed me right away.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you like it. So for this industrial client, when they send us into these towns, they also want us to kind of show what life is like in these towns. So when we were in Leon, we spent some time just shooting pictures around town, and here I was just walking down the street, and here's this guy with his dog. I like the composition. I like it was a real slope of the road, and here's this guy, and he's got a Cubs hat on and his dog, and he's probably looking at me like, and I didn't lift the camera up to my eye. I don't think he ever knew it. The camera's just kind of pick it up from your side, and you shoot, kind of what lens you have going, and I just like that moment. It's a real moment. So here's another street photo, and this is in Frankfurt, Germany, and I was actually born in Germany. My mom is from Germany. My dad met my mom when he was in the service there, and we were able to talk my parents into going back there a couple of years ago. And one morning, Judy and I had just gone for a walk, and walking down the street, and this guy was just having his morning breakfast and his coffee, the guy heading off to work and checking something on his phone. But I just love, you can tell that guy's a little too big for that food truck. It's not a big American food truck, but he's making his crepes and coffee, and I just love this little moment here.
If just looking at this one would have looked more staged to me, but this is really that's how it is there, because like you said, just the intimacy of it, one customer, one entrepreneur in a very tight area. So cool.
So my wife has a sister who is a sister at a convent in Manitowoc, at Holy Family Convent there, and we bought her a pair of ice skates for her birthday a couple years ago and brought those down there. And the convent is right on Silver Lake, so they will clear off some of the ice there, and some of the sisters will go ice skating. Well, we had bought her figure skates and she was used to hockey skates. So the three of them, you know, I'm shooting pictures. I don't even know if they knew that I'm shooting pictures. And they're skating along, holding hands, just having this great, you know, afternoon of skating. And Judy's sister Ann, caught the little tooth on the front of her eye on the figure skates and took this tumble. And this is like a 7-picture sequence of her boom, 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 boom. And she was okay after that. Her feelings were hurt more than her knee probably was, but it's just this moment, you know. I mean, you got Sister Ann wiping out, but the other two sisters just like that. Oh my God, you know.
So let's move on to some tips.
Sure. When I go to a Packer game, I have 3 cameras, and each camera does a little bit different. So I've got the first camera I'll talk about is it's a pretty normal type camera. And it has a 7200 zoom on it. So this is the camera that I'll use for like features before the game. You know, when I'm shooting tailgating, this is my primary lens. But this is the lens that I'll switch to if, because I shoot in the end zone, if they're in the red zone. I'll usually switch to this just so that I'm not over lensed. I'm not too long of a lens and I can zoom back and get things. And then this camera's like either around my neck or right at my side if I'm kneeling. And this is a 16 to 35 zoom, and I've usually got it zoomed all the way out. And this is the lens that I'll grab if somebody does a Lambo leap or something like that. This is the camera I go to. But the camera that I shoot the majority of the action with, and this is 90% of the stuff, and it's the fastest of the cameras, and it'll blaze away and shoot, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 frames a second. And the lens that's on here is a 200 to 400 zoom, and it has a built-in 1:4 converter on it. So it'll shoot 200 millimeter all the way up to 560. So with this lens, I can cover 80% of the field. So this is the bread and butter. It's not a cheap lens. It's like $11,000, and the body's about $6,000. So
is this all waterproof?
It is water resistant.
Okay.
So yeah, you don't want to take it swimming, but a little bit of water, if it's raining or a little bit of snow on it. But you spend the $300-400 and get a good rain cover for it. But it can take a little bit of that. So that's the cameras that I shoot with. And if I was going to give people photo tips, and people want to know, so there's the magical setting or whatever. I mean, I shoot a lot of stuff on auto, but I also shoot what's called a raw file. And a lot of people can't necessarily shoot that raw file because they don't have maybe the software to process that, but that raw file gives me a lot of control in post-production on what I can do with that shot, and changing color cast and brightness and darkness and things like that. But what I always try to do is I try to shoot as long a lens as I possibly can, and I always try to shoot with as shallow of depth of field as I can, so that it takes that person, isolates them from the background more. Try to have that background further away so you get that nice bokeh. And even when you guys were setting up for this, you can see that what's behind me isn't like tack sharp. It's got that softness to it. I'm in focus, but what's back there isn't. And that's because they've got a little bit longer lens on their video cameras here. They're shooting a shallow depth of field, so it separates me from that. If like they had all this depth of field, that background behind me would be very distracting. So that's, an example you can see right now. That is what I try to do when I'm shooting still photos. And another thing that I think people need to really pay attention to how the light is on somebody. I don't know how often I'll see somebody and they'll like, oh, hey, I want to get the picture of the three of you together, and I'll look, and the one person's like in shadow and the other two are in this incredibly contrasty light, and I'm just like, if you just moved everybody into that shadow, that nice even shadow light, it's going to be, a better photo. So pay attention to that light. When you guys got here today, you didn't want to go out and necessarily shoot any of the outside stuff at high noon because the light's terrible at high noon. You wanted to do that later on in the day when the light's a little lower and it's a more flattering light. You know, you don't have that just light right above you and those harsh shadows. You want to have that softer light later in the day. So,
some people knew that.
Right.
I was hearing about that for the first time.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, I'll even see them like, hey, you know, let's take the picture of the three of you, and they go up against this wall, and it's that wall that's the background. Well, you want to get people in context. You want to show the environment that they're in. So, you know, don't think about putting them not against that wall, but, you know, we're at this party. Have the party in the background, but if you shoot with that shallower depth of field, you get that nice, like, you know, here, you see that nice area behind me. You know, get that in that shot of that person, or, you know, there's two people together that you want to show. So you get that, you know, separate them from the background. But you're going to shoot that picture, that moment, them looking there, but shoot some photos as they're, you know, getting in at that position, when they're laughing, they're joking around. And even after you get that, you know, say a little joke, they smile, they laugh away, they move away from one another, they're interacting. So get that moment after the moment, you know, get the more candid shot. So again, I don't have any, you know, always shoot your pictures at f8. No, it's all these little things. And, you know, I think I'm pretty good at post-processing a picture, and that's what can really help a shot. And a lot of people don't have Photoshop or that editing software, and that's what really helps shots out. But follow those couple things. Not everybody can afford a lens that's going to give you that great bokeh, that great out of focus background. But, you know, if you can get a little longer lens with a big aperture that will do that, that's great. If you can get something a little wider, that's great too. So it's all those, you know, little things. Some of that stuff costs a little bit of money, but, you know, a lot of people shoot a lot of great pictures just with their iPhones. So
I'm gonna have to think through these things and play with them more.
Well, you want to go learn about maple syruping?
I definitely do.
Right. Key thing is maple syrup comes from maple trees.
Wow. This is gorgeous today.
Yeah. It's nice that we got this little natural ridge here to get into the woods.
Mike took us on a tour of his wooded yard covered in maple trees. Not a bad day. To see more of Mike's commercial photography, head to roemerphoto.com. Special thanks to the Associated Press for the use of their photos in this segment. For your 50 Forward story, I'm Steve Tate.